Hello, everyone. Theo Stiegler here from Nexus for Change for another one of our weekly webinars. We are continuing to be focused on virtual collaboration and sharing with you, hopefully, some tools and best practices on that, and certainly also asking you all that are here to share your experiences and add to our shared experience. I typically don't start on the getting started instructions, but I want to just show that slide for a couple more seconds on the recording because I think it's a meaningful piece that can be important for a virtual engagement, that at the beginning you offer some sort of guidelines in terms of what the expectations or the hopes are for muting yourself, the microphones, sharing your video, etc. And also on the bottom, giving a basic overview of what you can expect over the next couple of 45 minutes in this case. So this is our session today on some more best practices in virtual collaboration. I will share a link in our chat with the recording from last week's capture and some thoughts that are typed up in our blog. You can look at the session from last week there. And if I had been more nimble with this, I would have pulled that up already to share it quickly. Here we go. I encourage all of you to use the blog to post any questions. There might be folks here that have experience and can answer those questions right away if it's something directly related, even just something you want to remember. The chat is a helpful piece for me to sort of after the fact go and capture what we talked about and make sure that I track of things that we discussed that we might want to share. So feel free to use that chat. A quick note for facilitators in the chat, if you're trying to leverage the chat with, say, a group of students or a larger group of folks online, when somebody sends you a private message in the chat tool, the chat will default for you to respond to that individual. So sometimes if you're looking to share a link or make a comment that you were looking to go out to everyone, make sure that the little "to" says on the bottom of your chat "to," and next to it, it either says everyone or it says a name, and privately next to that name, make sure if you're trying to share with everyone that indeed you are doing that. So today we're here for 45 minutes. Typically these sessions are 30 minutes. I thought I'd extend it a little bit because a lot of us have interesting thoughts that have been shared in the ongoing sessions that we've done here for Nexus for Change and also over at BGSU with more of a teaching focus. I encourage you to look at the blog. There is a blog post on teaching online. I'll put that into the chat as well. If you are a faculty member or somebody that would specifically benefit from online learning questions and considerations, please feel free to find more information. There's a lot of interesting things that have been going on, and folks are providing sort of their personal resources to our capture document that is linked from that blog post as well. So I will sort of intentionally look at a specific aspect or feature and then ask you on for feedback on several of them. And it looks like there's about a dozen of us here, so we can unmute and share those that feedback. But if you have additional thoughts, please use the chat to share those. The first thing that is increasingly becoming important to me, and that's something that I really try to practice with some diligence, especially in this moment in time that we're in, is to offer some sort of settling, mindfulness, prayer, whatever you want to call it, however it fits into your personal space. We've done different things. One that I find that has been really effective that I learned from the longtime president and CEO of Barrett Kohler is to just offer a moment of silence at the beginning of a session. Another one that you can do with your eyes closed and have somebody counting, but I found this GIF image here that somebody shared with me. So simply take a moment and follow the little green ball that goes around there. And so you would stop in the top left when it gets there, and you would inhale to a count of 4 if you want to do that in your mind or just follow. Then you would hold your breath as the little ball goes down the right side. Then you would exhale across the bottom, and then you would hold again as the ball goes up. So I invite you to try that out when it gets to the top right corner with a big inhale. And you can do that for a couple of rounds or just one round. Sometimes is effective. Again, the moment of silence I have found to be something that's really meaningful too. Does anybody have, I'm listed here, a moment of silence, a check-in using a poll. We'll get into those here in some more detail in a moment. Are there some other sort of alignment or starting a meeting techniques that you guys want to share that you've offered and used successfully? Feel free to unmute yourself. Roland, you're muted.
Offer one. Oh, I got to get on. Yeah.
I got you.
I'll offer one. Simple, but it's close to this. But it's inhale 4 counts, hold your breath 2 counts, and exhale 8 counts. No question, it will take you into a deeper peace than what you gave us. This is from Swami Shivananda, my mentor, the founder of the largest yoga organization globally in the world.
Okay.
It's named after him.
Excellent.
So it is powerful.
Yeah, there are many of these techniques.
100.
Yeah, Rick, who just joined us, is somebody who I've learned several of them for. Jackie shared in the chat that they started in-person meetings with telling a joke. Do you have one you want to share, Jackie? I could use a joke. You have one?
Not at the moment, no.
Not at the moment. Anybody got a good joke?
I don't have a joke, but I'll share what I've done with my clients.
Yeah.
Normally, I try to put a slide up to get them to focus on either something relevant to the business, something relevant to objectives, something personally relevant to me. And so that gets everybody's attention, gets them focused, and they're more attentive to me as facilitator.
Great. Yeah, Jill is sharing check-in questions. We certainly use those routinely. Excellent. So if there's any other ideas that you want to share in the chat, that'd be wonderful. A couple of quick rules. I mentioned some of them at the top. I tend to, especially for this size of a group, I want to give you the opportunity to mute and unmute yourself rather than have that something that I need to track as a facilitator to mute people in the meeting. Sometimes it is important, and I'm going to do that right now. Carol is here. Should for some reason your connection not be stable, it is always helpful to have somebody that is assigned as a co-host, because depending on your meeting settings, you might get into a spot where, like, let's say my Wi-Fi suddenly drops out, and depending on the meeting settings, that could end the meeting for everybody. If I have a co-host assigned, in this case, I've assigned Carol co-host, then number one, that gives her some abilities to manage, for example, the muting and unmuting of folks, but it also would keep the session live for you guys to continue a conversation and me to come back into it, should for some reason my bandwidth give out. So that's a helpful tip, I think. And for those of you that are in like a teaching environment and you're trying to use the chat to appoint somebody or anoint somebody to be your monitor for that chat to feed back important information can also be important. Any ground rules that you have found important that you want to share for virtual meetings in general?
The most important one for me is awareness, concentration, presence, attention. Not doing 10 other things, but you're here.
I think that's absolutely valid. I think that in this current moment, we sometimes have to remind one another, though, that we have a lot of different things going on. I've had several sessions with folks that have to take care of their kids while they're attending a webinar. That might not be the norm. That might not be what they usually choose to do. But in the times that we're in, sometimes our attentions might be a little challenged. I want to share a couple of quick things with the new, the latest Zoom client. You have extended opportunity and ability to leverage reactions and participant options from the Zoom panel. So if you're trying to just get a feel for the room, you can use on your Zoom panel on the bottom the reactions, and somebody can share applause or give a thumbs up. Sometimes that's nice feedback, especially with larger groups. If you go into the more option and the participant option, so you have a, probably most of you have the camera and the little projector or camera. Next to that should be a participant option. If you click on that, you can raise your hand, you can say yes or no to somebody, you can say go slower or faster. And under the more option there, you can even give a thumbs down. We had a session about 2 hours ago where somebody that was in a teaching position asked, well, what if they don't want to give the thumbs down because it's next to their name and they feel like that wouldn't be appropriate. They want to do it anonymously. Oh, anonymously, that word is difficult, huh? If you want to give an anonymous reaction, how do you do that? Would be the question. And the best tool that we have found on Zoom for that is a poll. Because if you see here on the top corner, after you name that, you can click the anonymous button, and that makes the results from that poll anonymous. Some of us have used this to open a session. You might use them to gauge an audience or even to vote on an option. And so I'm going to, just so that you have that experience, I'm going to launch a poll here that should be popping up on your screen. And the question for this is, what is your favorite tool for virtual engagement collaboration of the ones that are available routinely here in Zoom and some other platforms? So please go ahead and vote and tell me if the chat, the screen sharing, the breakout rooms. I think the way this is set, you can click on 2 out of the options. If there's 2 that you really love. Give you guys another 20 seconds to vote. Looks like half of us have voted. All right, that looks like a slight lead for the chat. Now, if I put this on my share screen, are you guys able to see that that poll as it's moving? Do you guys have the green favorite virtual tool feature visible? No. Okay, so that's one of the features that Zoom hides from participants in the share screen, assuming that I want to manage that as a facilitator. If I end the poll, I should be able to share the results. There we go. And you guys can now see that chat and screen sharing were the favorites, with breakout rooms and polls somewhat behind. And now if I stop sharing that, I can either relaunch this poll or go to another one. To maybe have a little bit of clarity on what we want to focus on, if we were to spend specific time on either breakout rooms or setting up a meeting, what would be your preference to spend time on this afternoon? Go ahead and share what focus you would prefer. Can you guys see the poll to respond to? No? Okay, that seems to be a bandwidth issue.
That's why we were using chat.
Interesting. I've not, how about now?
Now it just came up.
Excellent. So for me here, it was showing that you guys could see it, and obviously you couldn't, so there seemed to be possible bandwidth issues with that as well. Okay, about half of you have voted and indicated that the breakout rooms would be more helpful, so we'll focus on that here in a minute. Thank you. So that's a great feature that, again, you can set to anonymous and ask a question that you need some feedback for. Sorry, Jackie, what were you going to vote for? Breakout rooms. Okay, good. So screen share options. When you click on screen share, number one, you have to enable that setting for participants. If you're asking participants to share, you can do that as a global setting in your Zoom account, that always meetings that you create allow participants to share them. There are certain sub-settings that you can identify. Right now, my default for screen sharing is that any of you can share the screen, but I'm the only one that can basically share the screen and take your screen sharing privileges away from you. You can also set it in such a way that any participant could do that. I have found that to sometimes be a little bit chaotic. So it's easier for the facilitator potentially to do that. Be aware that if you're on a single screen device and you're screen sharing, that limits some of the other options that you quickly and easily have access to. I encourage you to trial dual screen setups. one of the things that seem to have been helpful for folks, if you have any sort of laptop that is of a newer ilk, rather, most of them have an HDMI output, and you can use your flat screen TV, 99% of which have a HDMI input. Just even maybe try it with the cable from the cable box and use that as a secondary screen. That can be at least, if just to try it out to see if it's worth for you to invest in a 2-screen setup. I use Google Slides for my presentations, and I wanted to just share with you real quick how I do that with my 2-screen setup. I'm going to switch to another camera that I can actually move around and hopefully share and show you. So my setup has my laptop here on the bottom and then my secondary screen on the top. I'm going to pull back a little bit. So on my laptop right now is the screen that I'm sharing with all of you. That's a Google Slide, which I have set to, let's cooperate. So here you can, in Google Slides, you can choose different presentation options. And the one that I use is the presenter view. So that will make the screen go full screen on the bottom for the screen that I'm sharing with you. And it also gives me the second panel where I can see the next and previous slide. I'm moving that up to my second screen up here. So I have now on the top this panel that I can navigate my slides, and on the bottom the slides that you are seeing. And so I have screen real estate left over on my second screen here to look at all of you. I also have the participant panel pulled up in case anybody is indicating to me that they're raising their hands. I can also monitor the chat. It takes a little second to set up before I start the meeting, but it's pretty easy to navigate once you sort of have a routine for that. So I encourage you to try that, to be more nimble as a facilitator. And I'll go back to my other camera. Any comments or questions on screen sharing?
It wasn't specific to screen sharing, but I'm wondering why you use Google Slides.
I use Google Slides because I'm, that's been sort of the platform that at Nexus for Change we have used, that Carol, that Steve have access to. So for example, we have a session tomorrow and Friday afternoon. Carol will do some baseline default slides. I will go in and edit, and we can be on Zoom and edit that Google document easily in real time. There are other platforms that allow for that. I know that Microsoft Teams has opportunity to do things like that, but we've been in Google Docs forever to do that. And this specific presenter view option, I have not found in PowerPoint, for example. PowerPoint, when I've tried to work with it and use it, seems to make everything go into full screen mode because it's assuming that I'm using this exclusively for presentation rather than consecutively running a virtual session as well as sharing slides from my screen.
PowerPoint does work with presenter mode, but you need multiple screens.
Okay, I found it, and maybe I just didn't spend enough time on it. I found it challenging even with multiple screens to recreate my workflow that I had found in Google Slides. But certainly all of us have our own specific setups there. These are just some images, so I wasn't maybe able to show you really well with my camera just now. But on the right side, you see my setup with the laptop on the bottom and the secondary screen raised up above it. On the right, on the left, Molly actually was here earlier for a minute. That's her setup where she has her laptop on the left and the screen on the right with a separate keyboard. So there are different options. Again, if you want to trial it, I encourage you to see if you have the technology available to you to do it with in HDTV and the HDMI output from a laptop. The chat feature, I think we're using here ongoing. One of the things that I think is meaningful to point out, that typically when we are in a situation where we're all in the same space and we're in an in-person meeting, if you want to have a sidebar conversation, that can often be distracting. As a faculty, you might say, hey, can you guys not have this sidebar conversation right now? That's actually probably the one feature that exists in the virtual realm that you can leverage and use, that is where it's not distracting. So if Maureen has a specific question and she knows that Rick or Becky might have an answer, she can ask it in the chat and it can be answered there, and it doesn't disrupt the rest of the presentation. It's important for me as a facilitator, if I don't maybe have a poll set up and I have a quick question that I need answered for the session to continue, I can say, please answer the following in the chat, and it doesn't have to disrupt. I think it's often meaningful for tech support. So I think our poll indicated that several of you like that feature, and it's certainly something that we can leverage and utilize. And so please put notes or questions in the chat. I will try to track those. Carol is going to try to see if there's anything that needs answered, and will interrupt me if we need to leverage that in that way. Any feedback on how you use the chat that would be meaningful for us to be aware of? Any other tips or tricks? Okay, quick note on recordings for your Zoom sessions. A lot of our conversations with the faculty and folks that are looking to move their in-person classroom sessions into the virtual realm was around finding the right mix sort of synchronous and asynchronous conversation and offerings. We are now all together synchronously, but maybe somebody that wanted to be here can't be. So I think it's really meaningful and important to record sessions and offer them for somebody after the fact. I have found that if you choose cloud recordings, which is a Zoom feature that I love, is currently somewhat challenged. I had the experience that I cloud recorded a session last week that typically would have showed up as processed and available for me to upload share within an hour. It took several days. I think it took till Friday from Tuesday for that session to be available. So I encourage you at this time to record onto your hard drive. If you have trouble finding where that file ended up after you hit end meeting or end recording, go into your file manager and type in Zoom, and a folder will show up with a date identified file folder that will have your recording. If you are, so I was too fast there with my mouse. If you are cloud recording, depending on the kind of account that you have, you need to manage the storage that's available to you. I currently use I think $15 a month, $12 a month if you pay for the year account. That gives you 1 gigabyte of storage. With my half-hour meetings, I can record 2 or 3, and then it's full, and I have to manage and upload and offload those files. One recommendation that has been meaningful to help you manage that is if you have a YouTube account, you can upload videos on YouTube and have them there accessible, and you can do so unlisted, which means that somebody who goes to YouTube and types in Becky Burns's last fantastic video, unless that is a public video, it's not going to show up. So Becky can decide with the link that she creates for that unlisted video to share it with Theo and share it with Jill and Roland and Steve, but maybe not with Karen. But it's in her, it's her choice at that point, not a publicly accessible file for everyone, even though it is on YouTube and easily accessible there. It seems to lower the bar, I think, for students that might say, I couldn't get to your recording, you know, it was posted on this learning management software, but I couldn't get there for some reason. If you upload it on YouTube and send them a link, they should not validly have to struggle too hard to get there. You guys identified that we do want to look at breakout rooms in a little bit more detail, so I will sort of try to step through the steps as a facilitator of creating them, and then step through sort of the user or participant experience next. So if you are a host of a meeting, and at least in the sessions that I've done, I don't know if there's a subsetting that is different in Zoom, but the default is that the only person that can control, create, and manage breakout rooms in a Zoom session is the host. That is not something available to the co-host. So you see on the bottom, if you're the host, this breakout rooms option. Sometimes depending on how your screen is set up, you have to click on more and then go to breakout rooms. But in that setting, once you have clicked it, you will have a panel that looks something like the bottom right image here that you can see. Oh, important, you have to have breakout rooms enabled in your settings. So let me go there real quick. If you are on zoom.com, that to me is, there's other ways to get here, but the quickest way is to just click on Zoom. If you are logged in already, you will see on the top right corner, my account. If you're not logged in already, it'll show you, you know, sign in or sign up, something like that. So I'm going to click on my account. And then Zoom has a lot of in-depth feature settings, but here under the meetings panel is an option sorry, not the meetings panel, the settings panel. And then under meetings, if I scroll through these, there's an option to enable breakout rooms that has to be checked for you to be able to create breakout rooms. And you can set that meeting specific, you can set that globally, there's a bunch of options to do so. But once you've selected that breakout room icon, you will see that you can assign on the bottom here, in our case now, it would show 14 participants. So I can sort 14 participants into 2 rooms of 7 or into, do the math for you. And then once you click create rooms, you will get the panel that is here on the right. And it'll show you if you are creating the rooms automatically, which is what's selected here. Zoom will create out of the 14 of us a grouping of 2 rooms of 7 or whatever the choice is, and it shows you who those people are. You can also create them manually. Let's say you want one group that specifically talks to Steve, and you want to pair 6 other folks with Steve, and you have another group that you want to specifically pair with Roland, so you can assign those manually. Once you have created even the automatic selection for your breakout rooms, you can click on the individuals that's shown here on that little inset, and you can move them to a different room if that is necessary. Let's say we have a session where 5 of us are experts in a certain thing that we're looking to cover, and I'm trying to create 5 rooms. I can either create those manually, or I can let Zoom create the rooms and then make sure I have sorted one of each of my 5 subject matter experts into those respective rooms. Also available to you here are the option to click here and broadcast a message to all the breakout rooms. So once they're in session, you click on broadcast a message to all, and you might share, hey, 10 more minutes, or you might share, hey, in breakout room 1, they just had this interesting insight that all of you should be aware of for your ongoing conversation. Or you could, any message that's important to all participants. And lastly, you can close the rooms. The default is for Zoom to give then a 60-second countdown to all the breakout rooms and a pop-up that says your breakout room will close in 60 seconds, 59, 58, so forth, before they return to the main session. Participants have an option to return to the main session with a button click at that time, or wait for that timer to roll down all the way to 0 and then automatically return to the main session. Any questions thus far? Did that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yes, it was helpful. Thank you.
Excellent. So here, that was sort of the facilitator side of things. What your participants will see, at first they get this breakout rooms. The host is inviting you to join a breakout room. Now, if you manually, actually either if you're manually creating them or with the automatic, you have an option. We'll go back to that here for a second. If you hover over this right here, you have an option to rename those breakout rooms. So let's say you want to name them by the individual that's leading the next, let's say 30 minutes of conversation. I could name them Roland's room and Carol's room. Or if it is about a specific subject matter, maybe we've decided that one of our rooms is going to talk about breakout room features and the other group is going to talk about chat features. You could, call them the chat breakout room and the virtual breakout room. But you can name those rooms if that is something that you desire to do, which can be nice, especially for longer sessions and engagements. Once a participant clicks the join breakout room button, they get this little slide down here or little pop-up down here that says joining breakout rooms. In my experience over the last couple of weeks, this has sometimes taken up to 15, 16, almost 20 seconds for all of that to happen and people to go into the new breakout room. And it seems to have to do with people's bandwidth. Folks that have quick Wi-Fi, it only takes a couple seconds and they're there. Folks that have a slower connection, it takes quite a bit of time. I had one session last week where I had people coming back from their breakout room and saying, there's nobody there. And I could see in my panel that just give it a second, they will be arriving shortly. So depending on what meeting you facilitate, it might be important to make folks aware of that it's just currently slow. In the breakout room, your participants can, they have to unmute themselves to speak is the default in Zoom. And I have not been able to track down yet if there's an option that you can set the breakout rooms to be live automatically. If somebody knows that, there's a setting for that. But my understanding is the default is you come into a breakout room and you are muted by default and have to unmute to speak. In the breakout room, you can invite me, the host in this case, for support with the ask for help option. It's available also even if you use it on the phone. When you have participants that are with you on phone or iPad or a tablet, a lot of times it does not appear obvious to them immediately that in order to get to some of the features, they have to swipe through a subset of screens. Where for those of us that are on a laptop, desktop kind of device with the Zoom client, the options are all available in the panel. On smartphones and tablets, you have to sometimes swipe, depending on if it's an Android or an iOS system, through different screens to get to some of your options. At the end of a session, the participants, again, this is from your end as a facilitator, you can broadcast messages, you can join them to go in for help. On the participant end, they will see a broadcast message pop up. I think it's usually in red on the top of your breakout room screen. They can ask for help and they will see this kind of panel at the end, you know, that your breakout room will close. That's kind of what that looks like for them. To manage your breakout rooms, you might see a pop-up in your Zoom screen on the bottom left here that says, so-and-so in breakout room 1 has asked for help. You can then either join that room directly, or you can click later, which results in a pop-up in that room that says, host says he's going to join you, he or she's going to join you later. You can again also join a breakout room directly from this. This is actually the participant panel. If you select the breakout rooms, this breakout rooms in progress becomes your participant panel, and you can interact there and join the rooms. And you can still, even when the sessions are in progress, move folks to a different room.
I have a question about this morning when we had a session with you and you sent us to breakout rooms. Excuse me, we didn't get the button to click to say, I want to join that room. It just took us right there.
Yes.
I wondered how you did that.
I meant to track that down. I think that happened with the update I did to the latest Zoom client, where I need to track down. So there seems to be an option in Zoom to either, once you open the rooms, for people to automatically get moved to them, or they have the option to get that, that pop-up that in prior versions, the default was that participants get this top right corner, join the breakout room. The default now seems to be that it just moves you into the breakout room. So I need to track down where that that setting is to do it, to create that option. I actually prefer to have the user select, because sometimes they might want to stay behind in the main session to ask another quick question before they go. So yes, thank you for identifying that, Becky. I will include in the blog post a link to that. I'm going to give myself here a reminder in the chat, option for self-selecting break.
Thank you for doing that.
Attendance, and I will track that down and share it in the blog post that you all will get in a follow-up email from me. Any other questions, comments on breakout room use? If not, I wanted to share some thoughts on session design. We've had over the last couple of weeks sessions anywhere from 12 people to 50 and 60. One of the ways that I just want to offer that I tend to think of designs for breakout rooms is what I think of as the Russian dolls or Matryoshka principle. If I have a design that works well for about 6 to 12 or more people, that includes maybe breakout rooms, that includes certain settings, some of which we've talked about today, then if I have larger engagements with more people, a lot of times that just means I need to figure out how to break those larger groups into meaningful, smaller conversations, whether those are, you know, with a certain subject matter expert, or those are on a certain topic, or they are on a certain element of the plan or agenda that you're working through. I tend to use my sort of session design for, let's say, 6 to 20, and then I just make breakout rooms of those sizes. Depending on how large a group you're engaging and how important, let's say, the reporting and output is from that, you will have to pre-plan and make sure that you have a host that can manage each of those breakout rooms. So let's say there is 120 of us here, and 5 of us have identified that we have certain learnings that we need to share or take forward into a following session. then once we go into those breakout rooms, maybe Carol is responsible for one, and Becky is responsible for another, and Dr. Williams is responsible for another, and then you would use that same sort of formatting, if you will, within that breakout room. Again, you would probably identify somebody who maybe takes notes, somebody who's helping you maybe mute or unmute in that space. And that can work quite well. I've done 2-day sessions with 180 folks where, we had very few, we had sort of at the beginning, at the end of 2-hour blocks, for example, we had sort of the mass meeting where everybody came together, but the majority was, okay, now go to your breakout room on this session, this session, this session. There are some platforms that leverage Zoom for that. Kiko Chat is one of them. If you want to learn more for sort of those mass engagements, maybe we'll cover that in a blog down the road. But that's just, I invite you to consider that Russian doll principle as one of the ways to think of it. We have 5 minutes left. This was my slide in case you all decided we wanted to look at setting up a meeting. I think we'll save that for a next session. Any sharing questions that you want to ask?
Teo, the question is in the chat that comes up all the time. Is there a way to record breakout room conversations?
There is a subsetting in Zoom that allows you to do that. It's a little cumbersome, especially because currently what I shared earlier, that the cloud recording feature seems to be hampered. So I don't know how effective and joyful of an experience that will be at the moment with the traffic that's there. But in theory, yes, there is. And with less crazy bandwidth of everybody being on Zoom, it has worked well. I'm not sure that that is what I would rely on at the moment. I would encourage, if you have breakout rooms that you want to document outcomes from, that somebody is a note taker or puts it in the chat. Another question?
There's another statement by Kate, which is very curious to me. I'm attending a session tonight where they are using icons and names for people to express breakout team preference. Looking forward to see how it works.
So
Kate, can you give us an example?
Emojis. So when you say emojis, was that the panel that we showed earlier?
I joined late, so maybe that was before I joined.
It's possible. I'm clicking through my slides here.
This makes me dizzy.
Sorry, let me see if so that's maybe one of the disadvantages. These guys?
No, actually, they're using, let me see if I can put it up. You see how in the name right there, they're going to have us use emojis somehow to put in our name so that we self-assign ourselves to different breakout groups. Okay. But I don't know how it's going to work, so.
I'm not sure either, as far as I know. Go ahead, Becky.
Yeah, I think they do it if you go into, they're probably going to have them go into participants.
Yeah.
And select one of those. They will show up then by their name, and the host would know that's the group you decided to be in.
So I would assign breakout room 1 is all the yeses, breakout room 2 is all the no's, breakout room 4 is all the raise hands. That would make sense. I was in a session that my brother in Germany shared with me yesterday, where the facilitator sent a PDF to folks. They had to print out some colored cards and cut them out. And so then you could give reactions. And one of them was, I can only hear you guys stuttery. Another one was, my audio doesn't work, but you could hold little colored cards up to the camera. I thought was a neat little sort of analog tool to give people something to mess with. And sort of, it tells you who's done the homework, whether or not they've managed to print your PDF and cut out those little cards.
Yeah, I've done that as well. I've seen that done.
Cool. Any other feedback or questions?
Yeah, mine is this. Can you put in, when you send us, the link for the tools, the library tools? I can't find them. Another thing you should know, the reason is I have potentially 3 paid members for the Asian OD network. They're going to donate money.
Okay.
And it's our first, money coming, and but they wanted to have a link to the tools.
Okay. I think Carol and I will follow up with you because I think that's separate for the rest of the folks. Nexus for Change does have, guys, this is what Roland is asking about, the Collaborative Change Library, and we're in the trial phases of an app for it. If you're interested in that, send me an email, but that is what Roland is asking for, is the Alpha 2 version of our app that can be available to you if you're interested. My email is in the chat. Feel free to email me there. And Roland, I will follow up with you on that.
Okay, good. And just so you know, then my next question is this: what about the cost? What level of sophistication?
Let's talk about that offline, because that doesn't really relate to the other folks here on the session.
Okay, good.
I would love to just have all of us check out with one sentence and go around the room and say how you're leaving, whether this was meaningful, whatever you want to share in one sentence. And I'm going to pick on Carol to go first, and then she's going to anoint the individual that gets to go next.
I'm in awe of how quickly this has come together. Becky, you're shaking your head. You're next.
So much for shaking my head. I always learn something new. Roland?
Yes, awesome, transformational. Rick?
Yeah, I thought this was a really helpful session. Thank you.
Who next, Rick?
I got to see the names. How about Jill?
Who did you say?
Jill. How about Violet?
Okay, I would say informative and value added. Thank you.
Who should go next? Who should go next?
I guess I'll have Carol go next. Oh, she already went.
I went.
I'll scroll down. Let's see.
Okay, so some of you are trying to manage your screens to see who hasn't gone yet.
How about Melissa?
Thank you. I would agree with value added. I think we are all kind of learning the presenter side of Zoom on the fly. And so it's always nice to hear simple tricks and tips that other people have. So I appreciate it. How about Kate? Will you go next?
I would echo that, just learning how to the practical side of it and hearing how you went and learned yourself, Theodore.
Awesome. Thank you. Jackie, I think that leaves you.
I guess gives me things to think about.
Awesome. I am grateful that you were all here, and what Becky said is true for me. I learned something new also myself in presenting these, so thank you for your feedback. Look for an email coming from me later today or tomorrow morning with the recording and some capture, including the identification on how to create the breakout rooms in such a way that the user can opt to share versus forcing them into the breakout room. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic rest of your day. Please stay healthy. Don't be socially distant, be physically distant and socially connected as much as you can. That's my new tagline for the moment.
It's a good tag.
I will follow up with you. Thank you guys so much.